This is a pretty lengthy process typically. So this is just an example, and there are different workflows for doing this. Sort of the idea of data processing or wrangling, it essentially is involves sort of exploratory data analysis. And so exploratory data analysis is where you essentially plot a lot of the data and you start curating the data set. So you get rid of values or rows that are missing, right? So there might be some entries in the data which don't have any values at all, or maybe they're duplicates. You get rid of those. Oftentimes, you might look for outliers. So you might plot data of a particular value, let's say, could be some feature, I don't even care at this point what it is, but you might see that it's sort of distributed where this might be a histogram. So a histogram, if you don't know what a histogram is, it's essentially you just bin up. This might be like the number of data points with a particular value. I'll just put like X1, right? So this could be the value of income or something like that if it was some sort of creditworthiness thing. And so you have these bins, and you're binning up the data, and it might have what we call a normal distribution, or something like a bell curve, or it might be slightly more complex, you know. But oftentimes what you're looking for when you do this is you look for some extreme values. You might look like, oh, there might be one or two values way out in the end like this. And there's outliers. And oftentimes outliers cause problems for when modeling. So typically there's a process where people take these outliers and actually get rid of them. And so this is one of the cases where, you know, you're going to get a chance later in the course to look at real data and sort of work on building some of these models. But the first thing you should realize is just this very first step is problematic. Actually, it starts even back here where you're assembling the data. But after the data has been assembled, you start running into problems immediately. And there's this problem where essentially what you're doing is you're trying to fit for the normal, right? You're trying to fit for the average person, let's say. And there's a concept of sort of working in from the margins, which is becoming a lot more popular, and for good reason, is that where the risk happens is typically in these outer edges, okay? People who are different than the average. And those are the people who are typically at a higher risk. And so even this step is something that has to really, you have to be cognizant of that fact. And, you know, when you're talking with data scientists, you have to ask the kind of questions like, what did you do? How did you, quote unquote, wrangle the data in order to build your model? Because these are the kind of things, sometimes or oftentimes, these are just bad values where this actually is just a mistake. But there are times where there are just, deviations in the data which represent real people, and you have to account for this. And so this is a case where risk gets introduced very quickly.